The Galactic Council chambers hummed with the familiar vibration of artificial gravity generators, their crystalline walls reflecting the bioluminescent patterns of the assembled delegates. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the human podium, her dark eyes scanning the sea of alien faces that regarded her with expressions ranging from polite disinterest to barely concealed contempt. The humans have been part of the Galactic Federation for only 3 cycles now, still considered newcomers by species who measured their civilizations in millennia. The Zephyrian delegate, his serpentine form coiled elegantly around his speaking platform, was concluding his presentation about the ongoing border disputes with the Void Touched, a mysterious species that had been expanding aggressively into Federation space. His translated words carried the weight of ancient wisdom and technological superiority that the older species wore like crowns. As I have outlined, Zeftar's voice resonated through the chamber's translation matrix. The Void Touched have proven resistant to our conventional diplomatic and military approaches. Their technology seems to adapt to our strategies with unsettling efficiency. The Nexary computational models suggest a 73% probability of significant territorial losses within the next solar cycle if current trends continue. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Nexary, with their hive mind intelligence and quantum processing capabilities, were rarely wrong in their calculations. Their delegate, a shimmering mass of interconnected neural networks housed in a biomechanical shell, pulsed with soft blue light as it added its analysis. The probability matrices are concerning. The Nexary collective spoke in perfect unison. Our combined fleets have achieved only marginal success against Void-touched incursions. Their ships demonstrate an ability to predict our tactical formations with 92% accuracy. We require new approaches. Elena felt the familiar weight of expectation and doubt pressing down on her. Humanity's military contributions to the Federation had been modest at best. Their ships were primitive by galactic standards, relying on crude chemical propulsion and kinetic weapons when most species had moved to exotic matter manipulation and energy-based armament centuries ago. The human military philosophy seemed equally antiquated to these ancient civilizations. The Kethmaran representative, a towering arthropod whose carapace gleamed like polished obsidian, clicked his mandibles in what Elena had learned was their equivalent of a dismissive laugh. Perhaps our newest members have insights to share? The humans have been observing our discussions with such intensity. The subtle mockery in his tone wasn't lost on anyone in the chamber. The Kethmoran had built an empire spanning 40 systems through what they called evolutionary warfare, strategies that adapted and improved through countless generations of conflict. To them, humanity's brief and chaotic military history was barely worth acknowledgement. Elena straightened, feeling the eyes of a dozen species upon her. She had spent months preparing for this moment, knowing that humanity's voice in these proceedings had been increasingly marginalized. The Federation had initially welcomed humans for their adaptability and resourcefulness, but as the reality of their technological limitations became apparent, that enthusiasm had cooled considerably. Distinguished delegates, Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. I appreciate Delegate Kethmaran's invitation to contribute. Humanity may be young by galactic standards, but we've observed that the Void Touch seem to share certain characteristics with conflicts we've encountered in our own development. A ripple of what could only be described as polite skepticism passed through the assembly. The Zephyrian delegate's neck frills expanded slightly, a sign of mild amusement, while the crystalline helix representative chimed softly in harmonic patterns that their translator rendered as gentle laughter. Ambassador Vasquez, the helix delegate's musical voice rang out. With all due respect to your species' enthusiasm, the Void Touched represent a threat unlike anything in your planet's relatively peaceful history. These beings have conquered systems that took us millennia to build. They've defeated fleets equipped with technology that your civilization won't achieve for centuries, if ever. Elena nodded graciously, though she felt the sting of the dismissal. You're absolutely right about the technological gap, Delegate Siltharian. However, I wonder if that perspective might be exactly why conventional approaches have failed. The Void Touched seem to excel at predicting and countering advanced military doctrines. Perhaps they're less prepared for something more primitive. The Kethmoran's mandibles clicked again, more forcefully this time. Are you suggesting that your species' inferior military capabilities represent an advantage? That centuries of refined strategic development across multiple civilizations are somehow a weakness? Elena took a deep breath, knowing she was about to cross a line that would either elevate humanity's standing or ensure their complete marginalization in Federation affairs. I'm suggesting that the Federation might benefit from examining Earth's military archives. Our conflicts may seem primitive, but they've been extraordinarily diverse and intense. We've fought in every conceivable environment, against every type of opponent, using every available resource. The Nexari collective pulsed brighter. Their interest peaked despite their skepticism. Define diverse and intense, Ambassador. Our records indicate that human civilization has experienced approximately 3,000 years of recorded warfare, with roughly 14 major continental conflicts and several hundred smaller engagements. This seems minimal compared to the Kethmoran's 47,000-year military evolution or the Zephyrian Empire's century-long siege campaigns. Elena felt a familiar frustration building. The galaxy's older species had a tendency to view human history through their own temporal scales, missing the compressed intensity that defined Earth's development. You're counting our major declared wars, Delegate, but human conflict is more complex than formal declarations between nation-states. We've spent those 3,000 years in an almost continuous state of armed competition, adaptation, and innovation. She activated her personal display unit, projecting a holographic timeline above the assembly. What you're seeing is a comprehensive analysis of human military development. The red markers indicate major conflicts, but notice the blue indicators showing technological and tactical innovations. We average one significant military advancement every 18 months, often driven by the pressure of ongoing conflicts. The Zephyrian delegate's frills flattened against his neck, a sign of growing interest. These advancement rates seem implausibly rapid. How does your species maintain technological progress while engaged in continuous warfare? Elena smiled, recognizing the shift in tone. Because for humans, warfare and innovation are inseparable. Every conflict teaches us something new, forces us to adapt in ways we hadn't considered. We don't see war as an interruption of progress, if one of our primary drivers of development. The helix representative's crystalline form shifted through several color spectrums, indicating deep consideration. This approach seems highly inefficient. The energy expenditure alone must be enormous. Elena nodded. Absolutely. It's wasteful, brutal, and costly in every measurable way. But it's also produced some unexpected results. We've developed tactical flexibility that treats every rule as temporary, every advantage as something an enemy will eventually counter. Our entire military philosophy is built around the assumption that whatever we're doing now, we'll need to do differently tomorrow. The Kethmoran's carapace gleamed as he shifted position, his attention fully engaged now. You speak of adaptability as though it's unique to your species. The evolutionary warfare principles have guided our expansion for millennia. Adaptation is hardly a human innovation. Elena's smile widened. No, you're absolutely right. But there's a difference between evolutionary adaptation over generations and adaptive thinking within individual conflicts, sometimes within individual battles. Humans don't just evolve our military doctrine. We completely reinvent it, sometimes multiple times during a single engagement. She expanded her display to show a detailed analysis of a historical Earth conflict. This is what we called the Second World War. Notice how the tactical and technological landscape changed not over decades, but over months. air superiority doctrines, naval warfare, ground combat, intelligence gathering, logistics. Everything transformed during the 6 years of active conflict. Both sides were essentially fighting a different war at the end than they had at the beginning. The Nexary collectives pulsing intensified, their quantum processors working through the implications. The technological advancement curve during this period shows exponential characteristics. Radar development, jet propulsion, nuclear fission, electronic computing. These represent multiple technological revolutions occurring simultaneously under warfare pressure. Elena nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. And this wasn't unique. Every major human conflict has produced similar innovation cascades. But, more importantly for our current situation, it's taught us to fight enemies who are adapting in real time, just like the Void Touch seemed to be doing. The chamber fell silent as the assembled delegates processed this information. Elena could see calculation and consideration in their expressions, even among those who had been most dismissive moments earlier. The Zephyrian delegate was the first to break the silence. Your records show impressive tactical innovation, Ambassador. However, the Void Touch possessed technology that renders most conventional strategies irrelevant. How would your historical experience address enemies with superior capabilities? Elena had been waiting for this question. By doing what humans have always done when facing superior enemies, we cheat. We break rules that don't officially exist. We use tactics that shouldn't work, and we turn our weaknesses into advantages. The Kethmoran's mandibles spread in what Elena had learned was their expression of intense curiosity. Elaborate on this cheating, Ambassador. Military principles exist for logical reasons. Elena activated another display. This one showing a series of Earth conflicts where technologically inferior forces had achieved victory against superior opponents. These are asymmetric conflicts from our history. Guerrilla warfare, insurgent tactics, technological improvisation, psychological operations. The common thread is that the victorious forces refuse to fight on their enemies' terms. She highlighted specific examples. Small forces defeating large armies by attacking logistics rather than engaging directly. Primitive weapons defeating advanced technology by exploiting unexpected vulnerabilities. Information warfare that turned enemies' communication advantages into weaknesses. The Helix representative chimed in harmonic confusion. These tactics seem to prioritize deception and indirect engagement over honorable combat. Such approaches would be considered culturally unacceptable in most civilized societies. Elena nodded grimly. That's exactly why they might work against the Void Touched. They're clearly adapting to how civilized galactic species fight wars. They've learned to predict and counter your honorable, logical, evolutionary approaches. But they might not be prepared for chaotic, irrational, and dishonorable human tactics. The Nexary collective processed this for several seconds before responding. The probability matrices for unconventional approaches are difficult to calculate. The variables increase exponentially when standard behavioral assumptions are abandoned. Elena felt the momentum of the conversation shifting. That's the point. Humans have spent millennia fighting enemies who thought they understood us, only to discover that our unpredictability was often our greatest weapon. We specialize in being underestimated. The Kethmoran's carapace gleamed more brightly. Your proposal has merit, Ambassador. However, implementing such strategies would require detailed knowledge of these unconventional approaches. The Federation's military academies are built around proven doctrines that have served us for millennia. Elena straightened, sensing an opportunity, which is why I'm formally requesting that the Federation Defense Council authorize a comprehensive review of Earth's military archives. Not just the major conflicts you're already aware of, but the detailed tactical records, innovation logs, and strategic analyses that show how humans approach warfare. The Zephyrian delegate's neck frills expanded thoughtfully. Such a review would be unprecedented. The Federation has never incorporated primitive military doctrines into its strategic planning. Elena smiled. With respect, Delegate Zeftar, Calling them primitive might be exactly the kind of thinking that's allowing the void touch to predict and counter your moves. Maybe it's time to try something unpredictable. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, translators working overtime to convert the overlapping discussions into comprehensible dialogue. Elena stood quietly at her podium, watching as millennia-old assumptions about warfare and civilization collided with humanity's chaotic military heritage. The Nexary Collective's voice cut through the noise with mathematical precision. The proposal has statistical merit. Our current probability of success against the void touched is declining. Alternative approaches should be evaluated, regardless of their primitive origins. Elena felt a surge of hope mixed with apprehension. She had opened a door that couldn't be closed, offering humanity's violent history as a solution to the galaxy's problems. The question now was whether the Federation was ready to learn what humans had spent thousands of years teaching each other about the art of war. The Assembly Speaker, an ancient progenitor whose species had founded the Federation eons ago, raised one crystalline appendage for silence. When the chamber quieted, their voice resonated with the authority of countless millennia. The human proposal will be considered by the Defense Council. Ambassador Vasquez, prepare a comprehensive presentation of your species' military archives for review. The galaxy may soon learn what secrets lie hidden in humanity's violent past. Elena bowed formally, knowing that she had just committed her species to revealing the full scope of humanity's talent for warfare. Whether that revelation would save the Federation or terrify, it remained to be seen. The Defense Council's primary analysis chamber had been transformed into something resembling a war room crossed with an archaeological dig site. Holographic displays filled the vast space, showing everything from ancient siege warfare to modern special operations, while teams of alien military analysts moved between workstations with expressions ranging from fascination to horror. Elena stood beside General Marcus Chun, humanity's senior military liaison to the Federation, watching as their carefully prepared presentation unfolded before an audience that was clearly struggling to process what they were seeing. The past 3 weeks have been a whirlwind of declassification, translation, and cultural contextualization as humanity's military leadership worked to make their warfare archives accessible to alien minds. Admiral Keth Vala of the Zephyrian Space Command, his usually immaculate ceremonial scales now dulled with stress, gestured at a display showing Earth's major conflicts arranged chronologically. I need to understand something, General Chun. These records indicate that your species has been in a state of armed conflict for approximately 93% of your recorded history. How is this possible? General Chun, a veteran of humanity's limited interstellar conflicts, nodded grimly. That figure is actually conservative, Admiral. It only counts recognized wars between major political entities. If we include civil conflicts, border disputes, counterinsurgency operations, and what we call police actions, the percentage approaches 98%. The Nexary Collective, their biomechanical forms arranged in a semicircle around the central display, pulsed with confused patterns. These calculations suggest a civilization in perpetual self-destruction. How did your species achieve technological advancement sufficient for interstellar travel while expending such resources on internal conflict? Elena stepped forward, having anticipated this question, because conflict drove our advancement, not hindered it. Every war taught us something new about engineering, logistics, communication, medicine, and organization. We didn't reach the stars despite our wars. We reached them because of our wars. The Keth Moran representative, Strategic Commander Thektar, his arthropod form hunched over a tactical display, looked up from his analysis with obvious skepticism. This cannot be accurate. Your records suggest tactical innovations occurring within individual battles, sometimes within hours. Such rapid adaptation is theoretically impossible. General Chun activated a specific historical sequence. Commander, you're looking at what we call the Battle of Stalingrad from our Second World War. Watch the tactical evolution over just the first week of urban combat. The holographic display showed a city transformed into a three-dimensional battlefield, with both sides adapting their tactics in real time as the nature of urban warfare became apparent. Building-to-building fighting, improvised explosives, sniper tactics, close-quarters combat innovations, all developing organically as soldiers found themselves in situations their training had never anticipated. Within 72 hours, General Chun continued, both sides had effectively reinvented urban warfare doctrine. Soldiers were creating new tactical approaches based on immediate battlefield feedback, then spreading those innovations through their units using field communication networks. The Helix military coordinator, their crystalline form shifting through agitated color patterns, chimed with disbelief. Such rapid tactical evolution would require individual combat units to possess autonomous decision-making authority. This contradicts all established principles of military hierarchy and command structure. Elena smiled, recognizing the core of galactic military philosophy that humans had never shared. That's exactly right, Coordinator Velthera. Human military doctrine has always emphasized individual initiative and adaptive thinking, even among our lowest-ranking soldiers. We call it mission-type orders, give people an objective, and let them figure out how to achieve it. The assembled alien officers exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their discomfort with this concept. The galaxy's military traditions were built around precise hierarchies, detailed planning, and predictable execution. The idea of allowing individual soldiers to improvise tactics in real time was fundamentally alien to their experience. Admiral Kethvala's neck frills flattened against his skull, a sign of deep concern. General Chun, your records show numerous instances of military units operating independently for extended periods, sometimes weeks, without higher command contact. How do you maintain strategic coherence under such conditions? General Chun brought up another display, this one showing the Pacific theater of World War II. Admiral, this map shows isolated units operating across thousands of miles of ocean, often with minimal communication, all working toward the same strategic objectives. The key is what we call commander's intent. Make sure everyone understands not just what they're supposed to do, but why they're supposed to do it. The Nexary collective processed this for several moments before responding. This decentralized command philosophy appears chaotic and inefficient. Our quantum analysis models suggest coordination failure rates approaching 60% under such conditions. Elena stepped to another display, showing a more recent Earth conflict. The failure rates are high for individual operations, but the overall strategic success rate is actually quite impressive. We accept tactical failures as part of a larger learning process. Every failure teaches the entire military something new. Strategic Commander Thektar's carapace clicked as he shifted position. Ambassador, you speak of failure as though it's desirable. Military doctrine exists to minimize failure rates and maximize operational efficiency. Elena nodded. And that's exactly why the Void Touched are defeating you. They've learned to predict and counter efficient, logical military doctrine. But they can't predict chaos, and they can't counter tactics that are being invented in real time by desperate soldiers who refuse to accept failure as final. The chamber fell silent as the alien officers contemplated this perspective. Elena could see the struggle in their expressions as millennia of military tradition collided with humanity's fundamentally different approach to warfare. The Helix coordinator broke the silence with a harmonic query. These archives contain references to what you term irregular warfare and asymmetric tactics. These appear to deliberately abandon conventional military principles. Explain their purpose. General Chun activated a new series of displays showing guerrilla conflicts, insurgencies, and resistance movements throughout human history. Coordinator, these represent warfare conducted by forces that couldn't hope to win through conventional means. When you can't match your enemy's strength, you have to change the nature of the contest. The displays showed small forces using terrain, local support, and intimate knowledge of their environment to defeat much larger, technologically superior armies. Vietnam, Afghanistan, resistance movements during World War II, colonial independence wars, conflict after conflict where conventional military wisdom had failed. Admiral Keth Valla studied the displays with growing unease. These tactics appear to deliberately target civilian populations and infrastructure. Such approaches would be considered war crimes under Federation law. Elena felt the familiar tension that came with explaining humanity's darker military innovations. Admiral, we're not recommending targeting civilians, but these conflicts teach us about operating in hostile environments, maintaining operations with limited resources, and adapting to enemies who control the conventional battlefield. Strategic Commander Thektar's mandibles spread wide. Ambassador, you describe warfare that abandons honor, efficiency, and logical progression. How does such chaos produce tactical innovation rather than simple destruction? General Chun brought up a detailed analysis of what Earth called the Eastern Front of World War II. Commander, look at this conflict zone. Both sides were constantly adapting to new conditions, new weapons, new tactics. The innovation rate was extraordinary precisely because the stakes were existential and the situation was constantly changing. The display showed technological developments cascading through both armies. New tank designs, anti-tank weapons, aircraft innovations, communication systems, logistic solutions, medical advances. All driven by the immediate pressure of life-or-death competition. Notice the feedback loops, Elena added. Every innovation by one side prompted counter-innovations by the other. Every tactical success created new problems that demanded new solutions. The constant pressure created an evolution rate that peacetime development could never match. The Nexary Collective's bioluminescent patterns shifted to what Elena had learned indicated deep processing. The innovation cascade data supports your claims. However, the casualty rates for such intensive military evolution appear extraordinarily high. How does your species justify such losses? Elena took a deep breath, knowing this question struck at the heart of what made humans different from the galaxy's older, more civilized species. We don't justify them, collective. We regret every life lost. But we've learned that sometimes the choice isn't between safe and dangerous. It's between dangerous and extinct. She activated another display showing population growth, curves alongside military casualty data. Humans have a saying, peace through strength. We've learned that being prepared for war, being good at war, often prevents war. Our violent history has taught us to be too dangerous to attack carelessly. The assembled alien officers studied the data with expressions Elena was learning to read as profound unease. The galaxy's approach to conflict was built around minimizing risks, following proven doctrines, and achieving victory through superior resources and technology. Humanity's approach was built around maximizing adaptation, accepting risks, and achieving victory through unpredictability and innovation. Admiral Keth Valla's frills expanded thoughtfully. Your species appears to treat military conflict as a form of applied evolutionary pressure. This explains the rapid adaptation rates, but it also suggests a fundamental acceptance of warfare as natural rather than aberrant. Elena nodded slowly. That's probably accurate, Admiral. Humans have never experienced long periods of true peace. We've learned to thrive in competitive, hostile environments because those are the only environments we've known. It's made us very good at surviving and adapting under pressure. Strategic Commander Thektar activated his own analysis display, showing current intelligence about void touch capabilities. General Chun, applying your species' approach to our current situation, how would human tactics address an enemy with superior technology and apparent tactical adaptation abilities? General Chun studied the void touch data for several moments before responding. Commander, we'd start by throwing out everything you think you know about how space combat should work. Then, we'd look for ways to force them into situations they haven't prepared for. He highlighted specific aspects of the enemy's performance. The Void Touched are clearly learning from your standard fleet engagements, anticipating your formations, and countering your established tactics. But they're learning from civilized military doctrine. What happens if you suddenly start fighting like barbarians? The Helix coordinator chimed with confusion. Define fighting like barbarians, General. Elena stepped forward with a display showing human maritime warfare from Earth's Age of Sail. What if instead of engaging in formal fleet actions, you started using harassment tactics? Small, fast ships appearing without warning, hitting targets of opportunity, disappearing before retaliation becomes possible. She expanded the display to show submarine warfare, commando raids, and special operations throughout human history. What if you stopped trying to defeat their fleets and started targeting their logistics, their communications, their infrastructure? What if you made holding territory so costly and unpredictable that conquest became economically impossible? The Nexri collective pulsed brighter, their quantum processors working through the implications. Such approaches would require abandoning established space combat doctrine entirely. The tactical variables would become essentially incalculable. General Chun smiled grimly. Exactly. And if you can't calculate the variables, neither can they. The key is to make the conflict so chaotic and unpredictable that their adaptive abilities become liabilities rather than advantages. Admiral Kethvala's neck frills flattened completely. General, you're describing warfare without rules, without structure, without honor. Such conflicts could escalate beyond any possibility of control. Elena met his gaze directly. Admiral, with respect, the Void Touched have already escalated beyond your control. Your current approach isn't working. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire, even if it means getting burned. The chamber fell silent again as the alien military leadership contemplated the implications of humanity's offer. Elena could see calculation and fear warring in their expressions as they realized that adopting human military doctrine meant abandoning everything they thought they knew about civilized warfare. Strategic Commander Thektar was the first to break the silence. General Chun, if the Defense Council were to authorize implementation of human tactical approaches, what would be your first recommendation? General Chun and Elena exchanged glances, knowing that this question represented a turning point in the galaxy's approach to the Void-Touched threat. Elena activated a final display showing Earth's most successful military operations, their common characteristics highlighted in red. Commander, General Chin said quietly, we'd recommend something the galaxy has never tried before. We'd recommend fighting a war you're not sure you can win, using tactics you're not sure will work, against an enemy you're not sure you understand. And we'd recommend doing it with soldiers who are trained to think for themselves when everything goes wrong. Elena added softly, because based on our experience, everything always goes wrong. The question is whether you're prepared to adapt when it does. The emergency session of the Galactic Defense Council convened under circumstances none of its members had imagined possible 6 months earlier. The Nexri Collective's quantum processing arrays hummed with urgent calculation patterns, while Admiral Kethvala's ceremonial scales had taken on the matte finish that indicated extreme stress among his species. The chamber's holographic displays showed a tactical situation that defied conventional military analysis. Elena stood beside General Chun, watching as alien military commanders struggled to process reports from the first human-advised operations against the Void-Touched. The data streaming across their displays told a story that challenged everything the galaxy thought it understood about warfare, victory, and the nature of military possibility. Strategic Commander Thektar's carapace clicked rapidly as he gestured at the central display. General Chun, I need you to explain these operational reports. According to our sensors, your recommended tactics should have resulted in complete unit destruction. Instead, we're seeing tactical successes that our probability matrices classified as impossible. The main display showed the Battle of the Kepler Periphery, where a small Federation force advised by human military observers had engaged a superior Void-Touched fleet using what the galaxy was beginning to call Chaos Doctrine. Instead of the predicted annihilation, the Federation forces had not only survived, but had inflicted significant damage on an enemy that had seemed invincible. General Chun activated detailed, tactical breakdowns of the engagement. Commander, the key was abandoning everything the Void Touched had learned to expect from Federation tactics. Instead of forming traditional battle lines, our ships operated independently, attacking targets of opportunity and disengaging before the enemy could coordinate responses. The display showed individual Federation vessels appearing seemingly at random throughout the combat zone, striking Void-touched ships with brief, intense attacks before vanishing into the stellar debris field that the human advisors had insisted on using as cover. Each attack followed no discernible pattern, creating a battlefield environment that resembled organized chaos more than military engagement. Admiral Kethvala's neck frills expanded nervously. General, your tactics violated every principle of fleet coordination we've developed over millennia. How did individual ship commanders maintain tactical coherence without centralized command? Elena stepped forward with another display showing communication logs from the battle. Admiral, they didn't maintain traditional tactical coherence. Instead, they used what we call swarming intelligence. Each ship commander understood the overall objective and adapted their individual actions to support that goal without requiring specific orders. The communication logs showed terse, fragmented exchanges between Federation ships as their commanders shared target information, warned of enemy movements, and coordinated spontaneous group attacks when opportunities arose. The contrast with traditional Federation battle communications, which involved detailed tactical coordination and hierarchical command structures, was stark. The Nexary Collective's bioluminescent patterns shifted to configurations Elena had learned indicated profound confusion. The tactical coordination you describe should be mathematically impossible. Individual units cannot maintain strategic coherence without central processing and command distribution. General Chun smiled grimly. That's what we thought too, until he started studying Earth's military history. Collective, you're assuming that coordination requires control. But human warfare has taught us that shared understanding of intent can be more powerful than shared adherence to plans. He highlighted specific moments from the battle where Federation ships had spontaneously coordinated complex maneuvers without explicit communication. Watch this sequence. 3 ships converge on a Void-touched heavy cruiser from different vectors, time their attacks to overwhelm its defenses, then scatter before its escort vessels can respond. No one gave orders for this attack. The individual commanders recognized an opportunity and trusted their colleagues to recognize it too. The Helix military coordinator, their crystalline form cycling through stress patterns, chimed with obvious distress. General Chun, such tactics require individual commanders to make strategic decisions traditionally reserved for fleet command. The potential for catastrophic error increases exponentially. Elena nodded acknowledgement of the concern. You're absolutely right, Coordinator Velthara. The error rate for individual decisions is much higher than centralized command. But the recovery rate is also much faster, and the adaptation rate is off any scale your military doctrine has ever measured. She brought up a detailed analysis of tactical errors during the engagement. Look at these incidents. Federation commanders made 17 major tactical mistakes during the battle. Under traditional doctrine, any one of these errors should have been decisive. But because each ship was operating independently, individual mistakes didn't cascade into fleet-wide disasters. The display showed how each error had been rapidly identified and corrected by the affected unit, often within minutes, with lessons learned immediately shared across the fleet through brief tactical updates. The overall effect was a force that seemed to learn and adapt faster than its enemies could exploit its mistakes. Strategic Commander Thektar studied the data with his species' characteristic analytical intensity. General, you describe a military force that treats mistakes as information rather than failures. This contradicts fundamental principles of operational security and tactical discipline. General Chen activated another display showing historical Earth conflicts. Commander, human military doctrine has always recognized that mistakes are inevitable in combat. Since we can't prevent them, we've learned to minimize their impact and maximize what we learn from them. It's made our forces extremely resilient. The new display showed examples from throughout human military history where forces had recovered from apparent disasters through rapid adaptation and learning. Tactical disasters that had become strategic victories, military innovations born from desperate improvisation, successful operations that had succeeded despite multiple component failures. Elena highlighted a specific pattern across all the examples. Notice the common thread, Commander. In every case, success came from individual units or commanders refusing to accept that tactical failure meant strategic defeat. They kept fighting, kept adapting, kept learning, even when conventional wisdom said the situation was hopeless. The assembled alien officers studied the historical data with expressions Elena was learning to recognize as a mixture of fascination and horror. The galaxy's military traditions emphasized careful planning, risk mitigation, and achieving victory through superior preparation and resources. Humanity's approach emphasized adaptation, resilience, and achieving victory through superior learning speed. Admiral Kethvala's frills flattened against his skull as he processed the implications. General Chun, your doctrine appears to deliberately embrace chaos and uncertainty as tactical advantages. How does this approach translate to larger strategic objectives? General Chun brought up a strategic analysis of the broader war against the Void Touched. Admiral, the strategic beauty of chaos doctrine is that it makes long-term planning impossible for your enemies. The Void Touched have been defeating you by learning your patterns and predicting your responses. But you can't predict or counter tactics that are being invented in real time by individual commanders. The strategic display showed how the success at Kepler Periphery had already begun affecting Void Touch behavior across multiple theater. Enemy forces that had previously operated with machine-like precision were now showing signs of hesitation and confusion when facing Federation forces advised by human tacticians. The Nexary Collective processed this information for several long moments before responding. The strategic implications suggest a cascade effect, where tactical unpredictability creates operational uncertainty, which generates strategic confusion in enemy planning cycles. However, this same unpredictability must affect friendly force coordination. Elena activated a display showing the current state of human-advised Federation operations. You're right, Collective. Our own forces are struggling to adapt to chaos doctrine. Traditional Federation training emphasizes following orders and maintaining discipline. Human doctrine emphasizes thinking independently and adapting continuously. The display showed training programs hastily established throughout Federation space, where alien military personnel were learning human tactical concepts that fundamentally challenged their understanding of military service. The cultural barriers were immense, but early results suggested that some species were adapting more quickly than others. The Helix Coordinator's crystalline form shifted through patterns Elena had learned indicated deep philosophical struggle. General Chun, your approach seems to require military personnel who treat warfare as creative problem-solving rather than disciplined execution of proven procedures. This represents a fundamental shift in military culture. General Chun nodded soberly. Coordinator, that's exactly what it requires. And I won't lie to you, it's a difficult transition. Humans have spent thousands of years developing this mindset through constant exposure to warfare. Teaching it to species with different military traditions is challenging. He brought up personnel reports from the training programs. But we're seeing promising results with younger officers and special operations personnel. The species that seem to adapt best are those with historical experience of irregular warfare or survival in hostile environments. Elena highlighted specific examples. Interestingly, some of your most successful students have been Zephyrian scout pilots, and Keth Moran survival specialists. Their training already emphasized individual initiative and adaptation to changing conditions. Admiral Keth Vala's neck frills expanded slightly, indicating a shift toward optimism. The Scout Corps has always operated with minimal supervision in hostile environments. Their training emphasizes independent judgment and creative problem-solving. Strategic Commander Thektar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Our survival specialists are trained to treat hostile environments as sources of opportunity rather than obstacles. Perhaps this mindset translates to treating battlefield chaos as tactical advantage. The Nexary Collective's patterns brightened. These parallels suggest that Chaos Doctrine principles may be more compatible with existing Federation capabilities than initially calculated. The implementation challenge is cultural adaptation rather than fundamental incompatibility. Elena felt a surge of hope as she watched the alien military leadership begin to embrace concepts that had seemed alien to them just months earlier. The key insight is that every species has some experience with adaptation under pressure. Humans just happen to have the most experience with applying that adaptation specifically to warfare. General Chun activated a final display showing projected operational capabilities as Chaos Doctrine training expanded throughout Federation forces. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't require abandoning your existing strengths. It requires enhancing them with human adaptability and innovation principles. The projection showed Federation forces gradually becoming more flexible, more resilient, and more unpredictable as human tactical concepts integrated with alien technological and strategic capabilities. The result was a military force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Strategic Commander Thektar studied the projections with obvious satisfaction. General, these capabilities would represent a fundamental shift in galactic military balance. Forces trained in Chaos Doctrine principles would possess advantages against any enemy that relies on predictable tactical patterns. Elena smiled, recognizing the moment when the galaxy's greatest military minds fully grasped what humanity was offering. Commander, that's exactly the point. Humans have spent our entire history fighting enemies who thought they understood us. We've learned to be consistently underestimated and consistently surprising. Admiral Keth Vala's frills expanded fully, indicating complete commitment to the new approach. General Chun, the Defense Council is prepared to authorize full implementation of human tactical doctrine throughout Federation forces. What do you need to make this transition successful? General Chun and Elena exchanged glances, knowing that they had just achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. The Federation's ancient military traditions were about to be revolutionized by humanity's chaotic approach to warfare. Admiral, General Chun said quietly, we need time, patience, and a willingness to accept that our students will make mistakes while they learn. But, most importantly, we need everyone to remember that the goal isn't to make Federation forces fight like humans. The goal is to help them fight like themselves, but with human adaptability. Elena added, because the galaxy's greatest strength has always been its diversity. Now we're going to teach that diversity to fight like it's been preparing for this war its entire existence. The chamber fell silent as the assembled military leadership contemplated the transformation they were about to undertake. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humanity's gift for warfare met the Federation's technological capabilities and ancient wisdom. The Void Touched had learned to defeat the galaxy's civilized approach to war. They were about to discover what happened when that same galaxy learned to fight like humanity had taught it to fight, with creativity, adaptability, and the absolute refusal to accept defeat as final.